All right, y'all, so this one is insane. My guest today, Henri Pierre-Jacques, has pulled in over $50 million in venture capital funding directly from LinkedIn DMs. Not LinkedIn ads, not some elaborate funnel, not some fancy networking dinner, literally people sliding into his DMs on LinkedIn and writing checks. Some huge people have seen him in the Wall Street Journal, have reached out, they've gotten on the phone and said congrats. He talks about how a billionaire saw him on CNBC, called him up, writes him a check. A Stanford student DMs him about her blog, introduces him to George Roberts, the R and KKR, who writes then $1 million check that turns into $21 million in funding. Henri goes through all of these details, all of these wild and crazy stories, but here's what makes this even crazier. Most VCs think that personal brand is beneath them. They want to stay quiet, stay behind the scenes, and act like money finds you if you're good enough. Henri said, screw that, and he went all in on building a personal brand, specifically on LinkedIn, while everyone else was ignoring it. Now he's raised over $250 million for Harlem Capital, one of the first major diversity-focused VC funds. But more importantly, he's cracked the code on something most founders are terrible at, turning attention into actual business outcomes. And in this conversation, we break down his entire playbook, how he went from posting his top tweets on LinkedIn twice a week to building a media empire, why his baby photos get more engagement than his business advice, and why that's actually strategic, and how he balances being vulnerable and being a leader when you got a bunch of people watching. Now, we also get real about what it's like being the only Black person in a 42-person investment banking group, why he wants to create the most minority millionaires of all time, and how personal brand isn't vanity, it's legacy. This podcast episode is packed. So if you're building anything right now and you're not thinking about how to turn your story into rocket fuel, you're leaving millions on the table. Let's get into it. For the folks that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about you? But also, what I'm interested in hearing too is when did you have this moment of starting Harlem Capital and I really need to do this thing?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I guess high level, Haitian American, first gen. My dad was born in Haiti, moved here. My mom is African American, so she always gets mad at me for not saying I'm Haitian African American. I had to put that in there because she gets upset. I grew up in Detroit because that's where my mom was from, and she moved us there. So I was in Detroit until college, went to Northwestern for college and majored in economics and poli-sci. I knew early on, I'd say probably middle school, that math and money and finance was my thing. I started trading stocks when I was 12 years old in middle school, and I had a couple businesses in high school and college. And yeah, so I was in college. I did a bunch of finance internships at Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and a couple others. Ended up going to Bank of America full time for investment banking. Did that for 2 years because it's a lot of work, 100+ hour weeks, and got out, switched to private equity, which really was probably the biggest inflection point because I went to ICV Partners, which is a Black-owned private equity firm, and there's probably a handful of them, especially that have $1 billion+ of capital. And so I went from being the only Black person out of 42 people at Bank of America in my group to all Black, firm. There was two or three non-Black people at the firm, right? So really big change for me, and kind of the first time I felt empowered and saw somebody at the top that looked like me, because I also went to Northwestern and private school, so PWI is, predominantly white institutions. And so I never been around all Black anything other than my family. So yeah, it was inspiring. And we, shortly into that, I'd say probably pretty quickly, 3 months, 4 months into that, Jared, who's my partner, who was my teammate at the time, I was like, hey, why don't we do what we're doing at work? We see all these Black men at the top, running their own business. Why don't we do what we're doing at work, for ourselves, AKA start an angel syndicate where we invest our own money into other companies. And he was like, sure, let's do it. So I texted Brandon, who was my roommate at the time. He's our other partner, and he texted his friends, and we all lived in Harlem, into Harlem Capital Partners. So that was 2018. So 7 years ago. Oh no, that was 2015, 10 years ago.
And for the folks that don't know, I think you said Angel Syndicate, right?
Yeah, so Angel Syndicate basically just we're investing our own money, right? So basically what we did was we created an LLC, and we each put for every deal, we each put in $5,000, and we would give our founder a $25,000 check. And instead of us going to the founder and saying, hey, I want to give you $5 and I want to give you $5, it's hey, here's one $25,000 check from Harlem Capital Angel. And a founder is more likely to say yes to that than like a bunch of 5K checks. Is $5,000 maybe a lot to you at 25 years old, but if you're trying to raise $2 million, $5,000 is nothing. And so even 25K was like tiny, and we were like barely
Yeah.
getting in, but it was like
Yeah.
25K was like at least like respectable.
Yeah.
Where it was
How
like,
old are
okay,
y'all at this time?
we were 25.
Wow. So
Yes.
y'all like, I don't know, I guess to the average person listening, it's like, so like how did y'all even have this extra disposable like 5K, 5K,
We were in
5K?
investment banking. So I mean,
Yeah.
investment banking, you're making $100,000 plus out of college. You're working 90 to 100 hours. Your food's free. You're taking black cars home at 4 a.m. So you really don't have any
Right.
time to spend your money.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
like I always
Yeah.
tell people like we were buying businesses instead of buying bottles, and that was just like that was our thing.
Hey, it worked out.
And so yeah, like we'd saved up. We had some money. We weren't spending it because we were working, 7 days a week. I was in the office Saturdays, Sundays, and so
Yeah.
on the weekends every meal's free.
Yeah.
Right, and so, like, we saved up, and then we, like, started investing, and then fast forward 2 years later, 2017, Jared and I were roommates at Harvard Business School, started recruiting, and realized, like, nobody was doing what we wanted, right? Because basically, we worked for a Black-owned private equity firm. None of our investments at the firm had people of color or women. Right,
Mm.
and then we were doing Harlem Capital at the exact same time. Like, we built Harlem Capital while we were in private equity, and so we were investing in people of color at Harlem Capital, like, not at work. So it was like the
Yeah.
question became, like, could we do Harlem Capital and private equity, like, at the same time? Like, work for people of color and invest in people of color? And,
Yeah.
like, this is 2017, well before George Floyd, and the answer was no, right? Like, literally, there was, like, maybe 1 or 2 funds that were racially focused, and so I turned to Jerry and I was like, "Hey, like, why don't we do Harlem Capital full time?" Like, we were roommates, so, like, literally the kitchen was our office.
Yeah. Why did you even make the decision first to even go to HBS?
I mean, both, like, very different reasons. For me personally,
Okay.
I'd always wanted to go. Like, I
Okay.
took my GMAT when I was in, college
Okay.
because your score lasts 5 years, so I knew I wanted to go
Yeah.
even when I was in college, and
Yeah.
ultimately, it was just, like, everybody who I saw at the top, like, had it. Like, all the partners at ICV where we worked, they all went to HBS. A
Yeah.
lot of my, like, mentors, like, my mom introduced me to a Black finance manager in Chicago who she went to high school with. Like, he went to, Chicago Booth because he was in Chicago. Like, so, like, everybody who I knew, particularly, like, people of color,
Yeah.
right? Robert Smith went to Columbia Business School. I can go through the list of, like, top finance people who all went to business school. And, though there's a big debate now, like, is business school worth it? I think, who you ask, it'll be different. I think for people of color, like, it still is relevant for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, like, I knew that pretty early on. Both my parents went to Harvard Medical School. That's where they met.
Yeah.
And so, like, early on for me, like, because my parents, had that education, I was like, I want to, like, do an executive program and, like, get a higher education. And so I knew that from a very early age. And I'm very glad to go. And I tell a lot of people, like, hey, like, I get it. Business school is tough, but, like, there are a few schools where you're never going to be worse off.
Yeah.
And, Harvard is one of those few schools where, like,
Yeah.
regardless, like, oh, I'm losing $250,000 or 2 years of my life. It's like, it's a 40, 50-year career. $200,000 is a lot of money, but, like, if you do what you're supposed to do and you graduate from Harvard or Stanford, whatever school, like, you're not going to care about those 2 years. You're not going to care about $200,000. Like, you'll look back and you won't regret it.
Yeah. I love that. So y'all decide to go full time in.
Yeah, so we were in business school. We started recruiting, couldn't find firms that had what we wanted. And so we were like, why don't we use our angel track record, which is like the deals that we've done? Like, why don't we show those to other people to try to get them to give them their money? And, as we call it, OPM, others people money. It's like we wanted other people's money to invest, bigger checks. And so, yeah, we did that during school. We ended up raising 40 million our second year of business school. And then since then have raised, over $250 million since then.
That's awesome. That's awesome. 40 million. That's huge. Going from like these
It was.
$25,000
To
checks.
be
I'm
in
like,
business school,
yeah.
we actually started raising in school. So, like, we had already raised like 15 million by the time we graduated, and we didn't pay
Yeah.
ourselves a salary. We were like, hey, we didn't like, because there was some concern, like, oh, you're still in school. It's like we didn't want like any like, oh, you're just using the management fees, which is the percent that we take on the capital, to be like, oh, they're funding themselves, they're going on trips and partying. So, like, we already had money, but like we didn't take any salary in school because we didn't want like any, I guess, conflict of interest.
Yeah. I mean, we'll pivot here to like personal brand and all this stuff. But I think something I tell folks all the time is like, whether you like it or not, you already have a personal brand. Like your personal brand is really like your reputation, right?
Yep.
And what you're like calling out is
You
like,
have it you
and we
have
were
it
trying to,
from birth. I have a kid who's
yeah.
a year and a half, and I'm like, "You got a reputation."
You got yeah, literally. But what you're calling out is that you were trying to like intentionally protect your reputation, right? Like even when you were raising that money, not taking the salary, not trying to be these folks that were maybe seen as like, hey, we're just living off this,
I
having fun in
graduated on
school.
Saturday, I took my first salary on Monday.
Great reputation. I mean,
I've been
but
waiting.
to that point though, I guess, and we've talked about this, I feel, but what was that moment where I guess you started to realize that building brand, building personal brand, even more strategically, could be a competitive advantage for y'all?
Yeah, I mean, I've liked social media my whole life, and I've like, there's obviously mixed views about social media. I think for me, it's always been a positive, and I've never used it as like a comparative nature, like, oh, what I don't have. And so I think just over time, like, and the mediums have obviously changed from MySpace to Facebook to IG to, Twitter to now I would say like LinkedIn and YouTube more. And
Yeah,
so I think regardless of the medium, it just like always was about one, like I want people who are close to me, and then obviously that extends to people who aren't close to me to know what I'm doing. So I do think, some as a person of faith and Christian, I view it the same. Like having people pray for you, will help you in your prayers. And like if you just pray by yourself, you won't get it. I think the same is true for like whatever you're doing, like having others like try to elevate you and help you will always get you further than trying to do it by yourself. And so it's like
yeah,
there's really nothing in life you should do by yourself. You shouldn't do marriage. You shouldn't do parenthood. Any of those things by yourself. I can tell you that for a fact. Right. And so I just like, I viewed it as like, it's nothing different. Right. And I think it's also about like keeping in touch with other people. Right. Like I want to know what other people are doing. Right. And so like, whether it's professional, like I'll have a conversation like I did today with somebody who I met from a large finance firm. Like immediately I went LinkedIn, add them, one, so they can see my stuff, but two, like I want to see their stuff. Right. And
yeah,
it creates like natural, like the goal of like to me social media is like how do you expand surface areas to like create natural ways of like grabbing attention but also like more connection, where like, oh,
yeah,
it's this person's birthday, like let me reach out to them. Oh, this person got promoted, like congrats, right? And some people are old school, like, oh, if you want to know, like, give me a phone call, yada yada. But it's like
yeah,
now, like we weren't created as humans like in this era of like 7 billion people plus like friends across the country, right? It was like in your
yeah,
village, in your community. So it's like I can't know what like my best friends are doing, like who just had a baby in Seattle in August. Like, unless you post it, I'm not gonna know.
yeah,
Right. And I can only
yeah,
reach out to you so many times because like you have more friends now because you have friends from high school, college, business school, banking,
yeah,
private equity. Like it's just, there's so many people.
yeah,
Right. And obviously like you have like your tight, but like even a tight circle it gets bigger. And so I've always just like viewed it as like this mechanism, like how do I create more surface area for people to know what's going on in my life, but also like for me to know what's going on in other people's life. Like some people are like viewers on social media, but I like to do both, like share and view.
yeah. What's been and well, before I even ask that, another way I think about it too is just like a lot of this game is like timing and luck, right? Obviously, there's strategy and being smart and things like that, but a lot of it is like timing and
And
luck.
the earlier you get lucky, the better you are.
And like posting and like pushing again, regardless of whether you like it or not, you have this brand. So like being more intentional about it and scaling it allows us then to possibly create a greater surface area to get lucky. Right? It's like every time I'm putting out posts and connecting and growing my audience and being intentional and thoughtful with it is just one more chance for me to increase that surface area for luck, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean the I just like literally the LinkedIn DMs have gotten me millions of dollars. Founders, I just did a post last week. We were in SF and we hosted a paddle event. And paddle, for people who don't know, is like pickleball tennis with walls. And I got a DM from somebody who like has a paddle fund. Like they literally invest in different paddle places around the country. And I have a call with them, this week. And paddle is like one of my core hobbies. Like so, it's like so many random things that like you just get now. Like you have to also share like why do people not like social media? Because there are cons to it, right? Like the bigger you get, like the more haters there are, the more comments that you may not like, the more you can fall. And two, like in the beginning, it's more fun. And then like once you do get big, like you're like, oh, I gotta post. Like I've gotta get the hit. Like before when I started, it was I'm just posting the post, like and like, oh my God, I got 100,000 views, right? And then it gets to the point where it's like, dang, I didn't get 100,000 views, right? Now you're
Yeah.
upset. So like your mentality about your posts definitely changed, which happens for like every influencer, so to speak. Right. And some influencers like pull away. Like Brandon on my team used to be an influencer and now he barely posts, like, because it gets to the point where it becomes a job and it's less about like you. So like it's a balance of trying to figure out like how do you stay authentic and then how do you not view it like as like you have to do it in work. And like if you are on vacation for a week, it's okay if you don't post for 2, 3 days, even though we know the algorithm, may mess you up. Like it does become like psychologically you get tied to it. And that is the hardest thing I've heard from people is like, I don't like feeling like I have to do this. And if I don't get certain views, like, that my post like was bad. It's like, no, like you're sharing your viewpoint and it's not going to always hit either because of what you said or because the algorithm didn't like you today.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I want to call out, I hear you saying like LinkedIn a lot, which I want to go into one, the specific story that I read about this like LinkedIn DM. But before we go there, I want to ask like what has been, or how I should frame this is like, why LinkedIn? Another way I was going to
I
ask
mean,
this is like,
change over
what has been
time.
your path? What has been your path with like social? Have you been on other platforms or has it been like intentionally like all LinkedIn?
I mean, so I'm on all the platforms. Instagram and Facebook are private. So I've always like kept those private and over time I've gotten more and more people on them. I've gotten a little bit more comfortable, but I'm still private. So I still have to accept you. And then everything else has always been public. Like Twitter used to be the go-to for me for sure. I used to post on Twitter like 3, 4, 5 times a day. Post Elon is just like the reach is trash. You can't get new follows and unless you're like talking hate speech or anything, especially obviously with us, like we're a diversity focused fund, like my posts are not getting promoted, right?
And
And
you were
so
using Twitter to do what? Like, what was the goal
I
with
mean,
you posting
I was
35 times a
using
day?
Twitter like, well, one, I just liked it to start as a consumer. I was like, this is where you could learn the most. Like, people, it's like you could just be in a room with all the smartest people in the world, and they were just literally
Yeah.
telling you random stuff. Whether it's even whether I agree or disagree with the president. Like, you could hear people with the president of the country just telling you whatever they're thinking. Right, the
Yeah.
top person in the company. It's like I was using it to consume, and eventually I did it to give, and it kind of became like just like a I don't know. I started like it was like a writing for me. I don't like writing. Like I don't typically write like with a pencil. But like for
Yeah.
some reason, whatever it was with Twitter, I was like, oh, like I actually want to do this, and it became therapeutic. I liked writing. It was like my ideas coming out. It was easier than doing videos and content, which is more work and effort. And then how I got into LinkedIn was I basically started taking my top 2 or 3 posts a week on Twitter because I would call it 20 posts a week. I would just take my top 2 or 3 and just literally copy and paste them on LinkedIn. And like almost guaranteed, like if they did well on Twitter, like they would rip on LinkedIn. So it was like a very easy, like I can't do that anymore because now I'll post on Twitter and get 3 likes. I'll post on LinkedIn and get like 3,000. It's like it's kind
Yeah.
of the opposite. I still do
Yeah.
post on Twitter, just not as much. But like Twitter used to be like, if it did well, like it was just like a copy paste and you knew it was to do well on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like
Yeah.
really why like I started getting to LinkedIn. And then as Twitter went to X and fell off, like LinkedIn kind of became like, okay, this is the place. And LinkedIn always like was the premium, which is why I only posted my top 10% because it was like whoever was following me on LinkedIn were investors, founders, a little more serious. And I wanted those posts to be more curated because some people do it. I don't do it. People who post 2, 3 times a day on LinkedIn is just a little aggressive for me.
Yeah.
So I just like, I never viewed LinkedIn as that. I was like, this is not what this platform was for.
Yeah.
I was for like a 1 a day or twice or 3 times a week. And so
Yeah.
like I just like viewed it as like, okay, I only want to post the best on LinkedIn because like my bosses follow me or my bosses don't follow me on Twitter.
Yeah.
So it's just like it was a different audience. And over time, the audience have kind of merged where LinkedIn has become more of a general audience compared to what it used to be. But that
Yeah.
was like not the case when I first started on LinkedIn.
I heard you make this comment about like, and I say this all the time, like there's millions of dollars in the LinkedIn on the platform, but especially like
I
in
mean,
the
literally.
DMs and just like connecting. Like people, I'm glad you said it because some people do not believe me. But I read this post, I think it was like a year ago, correct me if I'm wrong. And you were telling this story about this like, I believe a student from Stanford maybe like DM'd you and that turned into like an investment. Can you tell me about that story to even paint this picture of like what's happening on LinkedIn, the relationships, the DMs, the power of relationships over there?
Yeah, I mean, so that was the first like big DM, and there have been many more since. But Megan Hoster, who's now a partner in Andreessen Horowitz, at the time was at Stanford Business School. She had a blog post called Black Girls in Venture. I don't know if she still has it or not. I don't think she does. But she had reached out to me. Was like, hey, I want to interview you for my blog post. I'm a student. And for whatever reason, I was like, yeah, like I would, love to connect. Casey did the interview and she was like, I think you should talk to Linnea Roberts. And I was like, who's that? She's like, oh, it's George Roberts' wife. And George Roberts is the founder of KKR. He's the R in KKR. So I had a conversation with her. She was running Gingerbread Capital, and her and George ended up giving us our first $1 million check. Right. So like, it was our first million. We actually were gonna so it's funny. We started fundraising during the summer between first and second year of business school. We'd raised 3 million, which, management fees is 2%, and 2% of 3 million, $60,000. So I was like, we started recruiting. We were like, we're not going to graduate business school making $60,000 between the two of us. Right. And so we started recruiting, and they gave us $1 million like late September, and we stopped recruiting because we were like, hey, if the founder of private equity is to give us $1 million, like, we've got to go for it. It's like, one, like, it was very critical in terms of like, they gave us the confidence, like when we didn't have confidence in ourselves, like after failing to raise what we wanted to raise that summer. But then two, Linnea used to work with Analu, who's now the CHRO, the head of HR at TPG, and Analu had left Goldman Sachs to go to TPG that August. And she was like, hey, I want to connect you with her. And TPG ended up coming in for $5 million as our anchor investor in Fund 1. And then TPG introduced us to other institutions and probably got us another like 15 million. And so like that DM, like, by itself led to like 21 million, like, of direct dollars. And obviously, like, having George Roberts and TPG like led to indirect dollars because, people want to be around smart people.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, just like literally I tell Megan, like, hey, you literally helped me raise my fund. I tell Linnea, same thing. Like, one, you gave us $1 million to give us the confidence, but then two, like, that introduction to Analu, to TPG, like, changed the trajectory of our fund for sure. And there's been a number of others. Like, I had another DM from Northwestern alum who was on the board of a foundation who ended up giving us $5 million. And she DM'd me and she was like, hey, like, I'm on the board of this foundation. I saw your story. I think it was maybe like our Wall Street Journal article that we had, which was the best article we ever had. I can tell you a lot of stories about that article. And she reached out and I was like, hey, we'd love to connect. Black woman, she's on the board, and they ended up coming in for $5 million first fund, $10 million second fund. So that was $15 million separately from the $21 million. So that's 36. I've actually never calculated how many millions I've gotten from DMs. So that was $36 million. And then to the Wall Street Journal article. So we had a Sunday Wall Street Journal article where it covered the four of us walking in Harlem. It's like a photo shoot, and it was like printed version on Sunday.
Wow.
And that was Sunday.
How did y'all get this? Like, what was?
It was an inbound.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an inbound. They're like, hey, we want to do a feature on you. Like, we thought it'd be like online, not like paper.
Yeah.
So you actually see it. So the paper, I guess, Wall Street Journal post. So that was the first time I ever had a news article. And then so that was Sunday. Jamie Dimon, I got a subject line, Chief of Staff to Jamie Dimon wants to talk. So I think this is like, this is before AI, but I'm like, this is fake. This is AI, right? And so I respond, it was at jpmorgan.com. So like, okay, this is legit, I respond. And then she's like, yeah, can you talk tomorrow, Wednesday? So then, like, literally, like, Wednesday, 5 p.m., it was a 15-minute calendar invite. And get on the phone, and literally Jamie Dimon, like, hey, saw your article in Wall Street Journal. Just wants, like, having, like, literally, like, no want, no desire. Like, we just talked for 10 minutes. Like, before the 15 minutes over, he was like, it was really a pleasure to meet you. Do well, hung up. That was it. Like, never spoke to him again. Right. I'd actually met him before through a couple programs, but like, yes, I mean, there's like number of stories I can kind of tell. And I've done a couple like CNBC interviews that have also led, like, we got 2 billionaires that invested, they saw us on television and had reached out. Like, so like, there's a number of things. I should probably think about, like, calculate how much I've gotten. My guess is like close to like 50 million has probably come from like LinkedIn DMs that have led to that.
50 million. $50 million off LinkedIn DMs. That's the hook right there. That's crazy.
My new post.
That's the hook. I love that. And I mean, even if anybody's like listening, it's like, okay, I see how, I hear that you're saying that there's a lot of opportunity over there. What I want to break down even more now is like, what kind of things are you actually posting? Because what I want folks to also understand is, like, people aren't just reaching out to you on that platform just because you have a profile, right? Which 99% of people like have a LinkedIn profile, but they are reaching out because you're top of mind for them. You post, you like show up on the feed, you're posting about different stories. And so then that might lead somebody to like reach out or keep you top of mind, So walk me through to some of like how you think about what to post over there and the mix of content you're posting on LinkedIn.
So, I mean, it's evolved over time. Like early LinkedIn, top 3 tweets a week was very like venture focused. I was doing, I would provide like some of my best posts would be like Excel analysis, like where I would give people the Excel files of how do you do like market analysis or TAM or
I downloaded, you know what, when I was searching for your email or something, I downloaded one of your personal budget, like, trackers.
yeah, or like, yeah, personal
The
budgets. Like I used to do like a
Yeah,
lot of like Excel. Like I'm a big Excel fan. And this
yeah,
is before like AI Excel. So people just couldn't do it. So I was like, hey, I can
yeah,
do it and give you the template. So there's a lot of like just like venture or financial stuff. Over time that's evolved. I would say like there's like pre-dad and post-dad.
okay.
It's then like the post-dad, I stopped posting for a bit because you just don't have the time and there's like never a moment like even if you had the time, your brain's not thinking about like what you should be posting.
Yeah.
Like you just
It's
like
like
have like it was like
sleep.
a 6 month, it's like a 6 month hiatus of just like
Yeah,
no ideas. Like, it's like a music artist and just like no matter what I do, I can't find any lyrics.
yeah,
And then eventually like your son starts sleeping through the night and you start getting more time and your brain starts getting creative again. And now it's like now like I don't wanna, spend an hour or 2 hours like building an Excel file to share with people. So now the things I'm thinking about is like fatherhood or my faith or whatever it is. Like now like it's definitely more like fluid. I'd say it's probably 50-50 personal business
yeah,
versus before it's probably like 75 or 85% business and 15-20% personal. But now it's just more like whatever is like top of my mind, whatever conversation. Like last week, I posted about 996, which is, working 12 hours, 6 days a week. And it's the new SF thing. And that's because I was in SF and we were having these conversations. And so a lot of times it's just like, what am I talking to people about on the phone, on Zoom, in person? And
yeah,
it's like when those conversations are longer and there's more emotions or something, like my brain kind of sparks like, oh, like, I bet you other people feel a certain way like this. Like, why are we talking about this one topic for 30 minutes in person or on the phone? So I think the hard part for a lot of people is like in those moments, like, which is why people now like Grain and other AI tools. It's like, how do you like take a moment to like stop 5 minutes between your next meeting or call and like write like a little quick note to yourself to like think about expand on it later when you have more time?
yeah,
That's, like, the really hard part, right? Or, like, you're on a Zoom call like this or whatever, and it's like now AI can help you chop that up versus before you have to go back, what I say in the interview, read this, the script notes and try to type the it's a lot of work. So a lot
yeah.
less work now, but still for me, I think a lot more, like, personal and just, like, however I'm feeling, and I do less posts now, probably twice a week, and so, I'm more, like, in a less is more phase just with father and all the other stuff, like, it's just less of a priority as it was before, but I do think it's still, like, important.
Have you seen any as you've shifted to this, like, less is more and more of, like, a split of personal and business stuff, have you seen anything shift,
I mean, I think
like,
your
in the
audience
negative?
changes some because,
Okay.
like, the business post used to be, like, my best post. Now the personal posts are my best posts. Like, if I do, like, a photo of, like, my wife or son or,
You
the
know you're gonna hit it that
I was in
day.
the vineyard and I did, like, a panel, like,
Yeah,
it's like I was like, I never thought, that was, like, what Twitter was for, right? And
yeah,
so I do think LinkedIn has evolved as, like, people have moved from Twitter, and I think,
yeah,
like, my followers have also evolved, but, like, now, like, my personal posts, definitely do the best, like, "Oh, graduated from Harvard Business School, 5-year unit," and it's, like, some of my best views, and so that has evolved and changed. I think ultimately what I tell people is, like and some people are different. If it's your job, you're a creator, you're an influencer, then you have more constraints because like, you're
yeah,
making money on it. If it's, like, your side thing, you're not making money on it, then, like, I tell people, like, just do whatever is authentic for you. Right? Like, and if your posts, lose views or you don't gain followers as much, like my follower growth has slowed some, partially just because I think the algorithms and partially because I'm just not posting as much. But it's like, I'm fine with that because that's not I'm not making money through that, right? Like, I'm making money through the DMs. Like, there is like secondary money, but it's not my day job. Right. And so there is like a different lens for like people who are getting paid versus not. But like, if you're not getting paid, and hopefully if you are getting paid, you can be yourself. But I also get there is more stress to like trying to get the algorithm because you want to get the views to get paid. But if you're not getting paid, like I tell people like you have to do what's sustainable for you. And like the only thing that's sustainable is like share your authentic voice and talk about what matters to you. Otherwise it becomes a job. And then that's why you get all the people who hate social media and then like they stop and they were influencers. Like, I just don't want to do it anymore because I'm tired of it.
Do you give this sort of like, let's say I was a founder and I was coming to you, talking to you, I don't really have a personal brand, like, I have this great business, I don't really have a brand. Do you generally give the advice to founders like, "Hey, you should do this thing," or are you kind of, like, indifferent
I
on
mean, we're always like as a firm, we're media forwards. Like we always like push founders like, hey, we should do a press release. Because it's great for talent, good for customers, good for future VCs who wanna invest. The timing's gonna vary. Some people wanna stay in stealth because they want a competition. Like, so, like, we can be fine on that, but generally, like, we do believe in general that like media helps you, doesn't hurt you. Now, we don't always force it. It's just a preference. And like if a founder doesn't have a brand, doesn't mean like we're not going to invest in. We have tons of founders who don't have like Twitter or they have a LinkedIn, they don't post. Like that's not a big deal. Like if you're a consumer company, obviously it's more important than if you're an enterprise, right? If you're like building a prosumer tool like a Slack or Figma, whatever it is, like then like maybe it's more important. And like the voice of you does help. What it helps for is one, recruiting, because it's like when people are searching, do I want to work for this founder? Like they don't have to like do a 2-hour interview with you. It's like know who you are, right? It's like, oh, I can watch some interviews you did, or like let me go look at your LinkedIn posts. Like, who are you as a person? Like, do I actually believe in what you stand for? Versus like we had an hour of coffee and like, do I want to like quit Facebook to work for you? That's a much harder sell, right? And then like it obviously helps like generate excitement, like when you're trying to raise from other people, like, oh, we saw their announcement and a raise. It obviously helps customers because when they go online and search, like, is it just your website or like, is there anything else about you, maybe less important for like smaller businesses, like a $5,000 customer. But if you want to get a Microsoft or a Google and they want to do $100 million check, then if there's literally 0 links on you on Google, like probably not a $1 million contract you're going to get. It does happen, but it's just like you're creating more barriers, to people believing that like you're going to be around in 5, 6, 7 years. Right.
Yeah.
So like they're definitely pros to it. And it shouldn't, we always tell founders like it shouldn't be unnatural to you. So we don't want to like force founders who don't like social media to like, you have to be on social media. Right. So either you don't, or you hire somebody who can be the voice for you, but like you should not be like taking time away from hiring talent, doing sales. Like if you think this is like, hey, this is 2 hours of my day and I hate doing this, like that's not to anybody's advantage. And so like, that's not what we're going to try to force.
Yeah, for sure. And what I guess I hear you saying is like it doesn't like it's not the end all be all, but it can like really help, right? It can
There's
help
few scenarios where we think it's like a negative. Like there are
negative, yeah.
situations where it's like, hey, like we don't want to do an announcement until like we have a company we just invested in, and it's like they don't want to invest until we have the systems in place where like if we get the funnel that we think we'll get from the announcement, like we can take on those customers. It's like cool. Like oftentimes, you raise $3 to $5 million, and maybe your early product, and it's like you can announce like, hey, I raised $5 million, and now everybody's interested. And it's like, oh, like okay, we're gonna add you to the wait list. And some
Yeah.
people want the wait list, right? But then other people are like, hey, I want to be able to like convert you right away. And
Yeah.
it's like, is my business in a place where like if I do this press, I can get the conversion immediately versus like trying to like groom the wait list over 3, 4, 5 months and keep your excitement. So like there are like different reasons for like why you would delay doing announcements, particularly like fundraise announcements, like to time it. Some people want to wait because they know they're gonna get investor inbound. So it's like, hey, I raised my seed round in 2023. I don't want to do my announcement until 2025 when I know I'm going to raise my Series A because I know I'm going to get inbounds immediately. I just like want to go out like, oh yeah, I'm glad you saw the announcement. We're actually about to raise our next round. So you're already hooked in. So different founders have like different approaches to like how they want to do it versus others want to do it in 2023 because they're like, hey, I want to get to know you over the next year and a half before I raise my Series A. Different strokes for different folks.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I know we're about to hit time and I want to be respectful of your time. I have one last like kind of thought or question here. I know we were talking even before this about podcasts and like transitions, and I love something you called out here is like we're a media first. Like we love media. Talk to me about, I know you had a podcast before. We stopped the podcast. I think we're
Bringing it
doing
back.
a lot more on LinkedIn. We're bringing it back. Like, why? Like, why stop? Why bring it back? Tell me about that whole thought process.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We did like 72, 75 episodes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, probably 2021 to 2023. We did like seasons. So we typically would have 6 to 8 episodes a season. We would do like 3 seasons a year. And we'd usually rotate like who did it. So one person if like they're the only one doing it.
What was the goal of that first like iteration of the
The goal of
podcast?
the first iteration was we just had different topics that we were interested in. We wanted to bring, we knew other people were interested in those topics, whether it was like we
Yeah.
interviewed LPs who are limited partners who invest in funds. We interviewed Latina luminaries, so like who are the top like Latina women. We did like our own portfolio podcast where we had like 6 of our founders, like we wanted to share their stories with the world. So every season kind of had like a different message, but ultimately it was just like, these are things we're interested in. We know other people are interested in, especially like once you build your platform. It's like if people are following you, then they're interested in what you're interested in. Right.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, well,
Yeah.
why don't we just like, we've always been a firm of like, if we're going to do the research, like share the research. Like we don't view things as proprietary. So it's like, if we're interested in this and we're going to like talk to people, we might as well share the conversation with other people. That's kind of how
Yeah.
we got to where we are. So that was the first iteration. And why we stopped, one, it is a lot of work, right? You got like, we hired like we use Riverside as well. We had an agency that we were paying to like cut the episodes and put it on Spotify, put it on Apple, do the cuts, it's work. And then it was like the view, like the reach is less. Like I kind of talk about like for like books, somebody said like, if you're a New York Times bestseller, you sell 400,000 books, right? That's like gold standard,
Yeah.
right? So but like those people are like deep followers if they read your book, right? If you're gonna sit
Yeah.
and read a book for 20 hours, like that's a person you want. And so it's a different follower. And so I think for us, we got to the point where it was like the amount of work wasn't worth the reach we were getting on LinkedIn and Twitter, where like we could do a post that took 5 minutes and get way more views. Why we're bringing it back, X is just basically a lost cause at this point. I just think the platform was just like lost a lot of its like respect and reach. And so now you're really down to like LinkedIn, like Instagram's a thing, but like Instagram's not great for business, right? Unless you're a social media or an ecom person. Same for TikTok. Some VCs are on TikTok. There's like very few, like 2 or 3. Like that's also like following probably like if you're targeting like a Gen Z founder or consumer brand. And so like you've really like LinkedIn is kind of like one of the last platforms like left, right? And all the other ones that tried, Clubhouse, Be Real, Blue, Spill, like none of them hit during COVID. Like we thought they would. We thought
Yeah.
Clubhouse actually would like stay. And so I think it's just like you have to have platform diversification. We always had. Like we have our newsletter, and that's been good for us. We have like 10,000 readers on our newsletter. So like we try to create our own platform as well and Substack.
Okay.
But I think we just realized that, hey, like we got to go back. Like we need another platform since we lost Twitter.
Yeah.
And so podcast was it. YouTube is blowing up, right? Past Netflix, and video content in particular is in right now.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just like where the market is, like video content is in, YouTube's blowing up. And so we're like, let's go back to it. And, we liked it. We did it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so we're going back, but it's going to be slightly different, less like seasons and more fluid, continuous, but also with like a higher like caliber person. Like we're trying to talk to celebrities, athletes, people like that, like really, creators with millions of followers. Like the goal, it's going to be called Winners Welcome. And the goal is like really how do you connect winners of all ecosystems to like the diverse founders and tech people we're trying to reach. Right?
Yeah.
And so what we tell people is like, hey, like oftentimes like the struggle and hard part for our community is like there's not like an Elon Musk for us.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's not many women founders who are, hundreds of billions of, market cap companies. But like we do have Magic Johnson, who's worth a couple billion. We have Robert Smith. We have Michael Jordan. We have, a ton of musicians, Usher, whoever. Like we've succeeded in other fields. Like we just haven't had the time to succeed in tech yet because we just got allowed in probably 8 years ago.
Yep.
Right. And so it's
Yep.
like, how do we connect those people who've succeeded and who are now building things in the space, whether it's Steph Curry or Serena Williams with her fund? Like there are plenty of people who succeed in other fields who are now building in tech and know what it means to be a winner and know what it means to scale. Like I interviewed Big Sean in June at our founder summit for our founders. And, I'm from Detroit, he's from Detroit. And it's like, how do I like bring those stories? Like Big Sean like has multiple businesses. He's obviously an artist and he has a lot of stuff on mental health. Like that stuff is all like relevant for founders, like, right? Like founders
Yeah.
are 4 times more likely to get depressed and commit suicide. Big Sean's been very open about his mental, issues, and he's created things around that, right? Like he's created businesses that weren't tech focused, but he has scaled his own businesses. And so I think we're trying to find like unique ways to show this community that like we are winners and
Yeah.
like we can bring them to you. And they may not like be like the Elon Musk like in tech that you're looking for, but like people have done it and now you can be the one to like be the magic for like tech or whatever space you want to do. And that's going to be a slightly different take that we're going to take on this podcast versus like the other ones, which were like multi-season.
I love that because I mean, what you're also highlighting and saying is like you have been able, your partners, the company have been able to build a really good brand, personal business brand, do a lot of good things, have a lot of impact. And now you're able to leverage your brand, the company's brand, to even be and build almost like a bridge for other folks, right? Like you're able to have these connections, bring these people on, have a really good conversation with these folks to help other people, and there's this
Goal.
other. What do you say?
I said that's the goal.
I mean, there's that other like thing that I call out with personal brand all the time. Like we can talk about, $50 million from LinkedIn and all these things, but it's like also sharing stories and building brand helps us then help the next ones
Yeah.
to
I mean,
come,
one of our like core sayings is like, you can't be what you can't see. Right.
Mhm.
And like, we always tell people like, I didn't talk about this earlier, but like a big part of the brand for us was like the difference between us and like other funds is if you're like, hey, I want to invest in San Francisco, Stanford white guy, you put your fund on the corner of the street and you're just going to find them. Right. The reality is for us, like, as a diversity focused fund, like that's just not going to happen. Like, it's like, we've got to like give people partially like the vision, the person we don't know who's at whatever school or at Facebook and they're thinking about it, but they're like, I don't know anybody. And, no, there's not many like people at the top. I don't know a black person who's in the C-suite of Facebook. Right. And so it's like, how do you give that person the confidence to like leave Facebook to start the company so you can have the conversation with them to fund them? Right. And so like we were fortunate, we did a bunch of programs growing up, SEO and MLT, all these diversity programs. And we worked at one of the largest Black owned private equity firms, which was the reason we started Harlem Capital, because we literally were living and breathing it until we got the confidence because like really our boss like would talk to us about this stuff. Right. And she's like, oh, like we can do this. Like, you went to Harvard, like I'm going to Harvard. Like we can do what you're doing. It's like if you weren't one of the few people like us who were fortunate to do that, and you were me before, and you were the only Black person out of 42 people at Bank of America, and there was, 3 Black MDs at Bank of America globally, and 2 of them left after I left, right? And now there's 1 left. It's like you probably aren't going to have the confidence to go start your own finance firm.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's
Yeah.
like that's always been like kind of an underbelly of it is like you can't be what you can't see. We've been fortunate to see it because we've been in programs and worked at certain organizations. Like, but how do we do that for the person like who doesn't have that? Because if we're only focused on the people who are like us, like we're not gonna be able to scale this thing. Like we've got to convince people who we don't even know who aren't in our like, communities to go start companies. And that's a big difference versus like there's gonna always be white guys come out of Stanford to start tech companies. You don't have to like create that ecosystem. And so we've always told people like we are community, like we're ecosystem builders,
Yeah.
right? Like we did help to create this category, diversity investing, but like we also have always known like we have to do more media, we do more events, we have to create more reports because it's like, TPG told us, TPG was our anchor investor, like you're going to be able to scale. If you execute, you can scale capital really quickly, right?
Mm.
OpenAI, 40 billion, 5 weeks later, 100 billion. Like you can scale
Yeah.
capital quickly if you execute and you're successful. Then for us, the question is like, well, like, can diverse founders scale as quickly as we can scale capital? Because raising
Mm.
capital is hard, but it's also easy. Like making multi-billion-dollar companies takes decades.
Yeah.
Right. And so like you could raise $1 billion, but then it's like, okay, are there enough diverse founders 2 years later to deploy $1 billion?
For
Like
that.
probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So we've always felt like we've kind of been like creating this marketplace on like both sides, like which is more work and it's harder. And it's why like impact is harder because impact
I love
requires
it.
more like, focus and depth than like regular business. Cause regular business is you can operate, as is. Like if you want to start a coffee shop, there's always gonna be people who want to buy coffee for you. Now the question is like, do you have the best coffee?
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah. I was talking to Ed Duggar earlier today, this like pioneer in impact investing. And what we were talking about, I was talking to him about brand, and he's like, well, I haven't done much with the brand. The people that
Yeah,
know me
I
know
know that.
me. Yeah, the people that know me know me, the people that don't. But he was like, as I reflected, I see not myself or the work we do as the end all be all. I just see me as part of the process. And if I want to say I was a good steward in this process, I also now need to share more
Yeah.
and talk more. And to your point, like, how can I be it if I can't see it? Right. And he was like,
I
I
mean,
had
and that's
access
like
to see things.
I know Ed, right? And he's older
Yeah.
than me. And it's like, that's like a generational change,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Cause it's like my old
Huge.
boss, no LinkedIn posts, no nothing, right? Like even like Robert Smith before the Morehouse thing, like nobody knew who, no Black
Now
person,
he's
like, oh,
everywhere.
nobody knew
Yeah.
who, I knew who he was, right? And it's like that
Yeah.
like was a big change. Like, oh, like Black guy can be that rich and he can like just give back, like just throw it
Yeah.
at him, right?
Yep.
And he was like,
Yeah.
it blew up, right? And
Yeah.
so,
But also,
now
like, how
that's
many more people were like impacted because
yeah.
they saw
I
that
mean,
Morehouse
we had an
thing?
intern at
It's
the
like,
time who was in that Morehouse class,
wow. Yeah.
right? And so it's like, yeah, it's a generational change because
Yeah.
literally, like, you couldn't and you didn't want to, right?
Yeah.
Because like telling somebody you were Black or a Black-owned firm or company like could literally hurt your business,
Yeah.
right? And so like it's a
Yeah.
mindset shift of like there's risks still, like even like there's definitely less risk today than there was before, but there's
For
still
sure.
risks, right? But there's less risks. But then the question just becomes like, do I want to like pay it for like the program I did SEO, which is a program to get people of color onto Wall Street. Their mission statement is this, it's not about you, it's about those before you and those after you.
Hmm.
right? And so it's like the next you only exists because of like what you do, and like you only exist because of who came before you. And so
Yeah.
like you always have to like think about that. And it's an added weight that all people of color have. Like, as the only Black person in a 42-person group, like I definitely question and second guess stuff. Like, are they not gonna like hire somebody again because of a mistake I made, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of extra pressure that you don't want to put on yourself. But I think, for those that want to be leaders, I think it's just kind of required. And it's
Yeah.
something that
For
other
sure.
people who aren't minorities, frankly, ought to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. One last question. I know we're over, but one last question here. Building this personal brand or being so out there with your thoughts, ideas, what have you, I believe it helps us cement somewhat. There's different thoughts that I have around legacy, but it helps us leave something, When you think about your own brand that you're putting out there, like what do you want to be known for? Like let's say 30 years from now, like when folks
Same
hear
question.
your name, what do you want to be? What words, phrases, like what do you want to be associated with your personal brand?
I mean, like professionally, I want to be a winner. And like most
Mhm.
people, it's like you're already a winner, but I
Yeah,
guess like my bar is really, really high. So like I want it
of
like for Harlem
course.
Capital, like I want Harlem Capital to be a firm long past when I'm there. Where like
Yeah,
one of the like the lines I always had was like I want to create the most minority millionaires of all time. Right. And so that's like one of my things is like the impact I leave on others and how many people do I get to touch? Like as
yeah,
like a person in person, like people like want to know like I'm very authentic, very transparent, very vulnerable. And those things are just important to me. I think like if you're not your authentic self, like what's the point of life? And so part of my goal is like to inspire other people to be their authentic selves. And I care, to some extent what people think, because all humans do. I think anybody who says they don't care what people think is
yeah,
lying. But like, it's to as little as I can, I try to like have 100% self-confidence in who I am and who God created me to be. I think that just makes your life feel more free. And I enjoy seeing my wife and my kid and my friends like get that energy from me and then like feel the like they have that ability to do that themselves. I think like life is hard, right? It is. But life is also like very simple. Like when you actually put it down to its core around like if you have family, if you're doing something that you love, God willing,
yeah,
and like whatever it is for your faith or other stuff, like the rest of the stuff is kind of just like nice to haves.
yeah,
I think like we've gotten really complex about like what we need in life and want. And it's like as a Haitian and I have family still in Haiti and my mom grew up in Detroit. It's like my grandfather's in Detroit, 92. I look at his life, an incredible life. Very simple. Garden in the back, golfs four
yeah,
times a week. And I mean, just one of the happiest men like I've ever met in my life. Like he just always laughing. And it's just like, I don't know, I envy that to some extent. Like he retired
yeah,
when he was 45 and he has like 2 properties that he like, does rentals and like doesn't make
wow,
a lot of money on, but like makes enough, right? Owned his
yeah,
place in Detroit. Like the hard part for us,
yeah,
we can't buy houses today.
yeah,
But it's
literally.
like, I think it's like life is simple. And so for me, it's just like that authentic like simplicity of life is like really important to me. I think if more people do that, they'll be happy. I think we're in like a time of life where people are stressed, anxiety is like at an all-time high. People feel loneliness is at an all-time high, and it's, like, kinda just, like, sad, like, I'm just like, I don't want people to feel that way, and obviously I get it, like, but, parenting is tough, but it's like, how do you, like, make that as fun, as, like, possible and enjoy, like, that process as much as possible? Because we have way more resources than our parents had, like, raising us, and most of us are having 1 or 2 kids, and, they had 3, 4, 5, and I don't
Yeah,
even
yeah. Have a kid now.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I like dog, like, I have a dog.
It's
Right, and it's
literally
like, I'm stressed, like, I gotta go
yeah,
walk poodle, and it's like, yeah, like, your grandparents had, like, 5 kids in a hut in Haiti, like,
yeah,
I was listening to the Cardi B interview recently, and, they were asking, like, "How do you do it?" And she was like, My mom had, like, 9 kids, and my grandma had 13 kids, and I have 3 kids," and
yeah,
she was like, "What am I gonna complain about?" Right,
yeah,
and, like, not like
and resources.
you shouldn't, like, validate your feelings and, like, the pain you're going through, because even billionaires have pain and struggles, but I
Yeah,
think it's just, like, I don't know, for me, everything's, like, relative, and it's like, how
yeah,
do you put your pain into perspective? And, like, maybe that perspective and reflection, like, will make you reevaluate, like, why you feel the anxiety or pain that you do feel of, like, it could always be worse, and you don't want it to be worse, but, like, people have gotten through, like, I think about, like, oftentimes to me, I think about, like, Oprah's story, right? Like, just a very dark story, like,
yeah,
poverty, like, sexual assault, all these things, and you become the
yeah,
richest Black woman in history. right?
Yeah.
It's like, just like, what do you know, how do you think about that story? How do you tell that story in your perspective? Like, you don't want that pain, obviously. But like often, like one of my pastor's quotes is like, you can't get testimony without tests. Like
Hmm.
you need tests to have testimony. And so oftentimes like that is required for like the flowers to bloom.
Yeah, I love that. One, I appreciate your time in doing this. I've kept you way over. Two, I just want to say, like, to this question of like, what do you even want to be known for? To me, and we've had a couple interactions now, but definitely, if this matters to you, definitely just somebody that is like shares. Like there has been nothing we've talked about or I've asked you that you just don't really share and give back. And so I think the things that you've called out here, at least to me, you have definitely like lived up and just far exceeded like
Appreciate it.
anything I've asked. And yeah, it's been great to get to know you. And
There's nothing to lose.
that's what I feel.
I don't know, that's just what I feel.
There's also enough out there for us to all win. So like why not share?
But if end of the day you lose whatever and you're still yourself, then that's that.
You won.
You leave with what God put you on this earth with.
Yeah.
And if
Remember
you gain
that.
more, then fine.
Yeah. Well, remember that the next time you feel like you're not a winner. So definitely a winner. No, I appreciate
That's what
you. I
keeps me
appreciate.
going.
Okay. All right. I won't
That's
say
the
it then.
problem. You always want more.
Yeah. I appreciate you. This is great. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And I'll put in all the things where folks can find you and stay connected.
All right, appreciate it.
Alrighty. Thank you.